So my name is Jeffrey De Haan. I'm the manager of solution sales within iMore. I have a background in SAP as a basis consultant and as a solution architect. And going there to iMore with a more focus on monitoring, I'm trying to combine, well, at least I'm combining my SAP knowledge and monitoring in order to get the best possible solutions for our customer. So let's see. So a short agenda so you all know what's coming up. I will first introduce a bit about iMore, who we are and what we do. And then we go more into the part that you guys joined for, hopefully. That's the introduction to Splunk, because I will go a bit into Splunk because we noted upfront that some people that have joined might not know what Splunk is or what does it do, but it's critical to understand Splunk in order to see the power that PowerConnect can bring to the table. So when we've covered that, we will go more into the PowerConnect tool. And then we go into the use cases, which I just mentioned earlier. After that, there's some time for the Q&A. But as I also said, make sure if you have some questions, please do ask them, because it will be a shame if you have a question in order to be able to follow the rest of the webinar and your question isn't answered. So don't hesitate to ask any questions during the presentation. I will try to stop and ask Inge if there's any questions, and we'll cover this after a few slides. Then we will have a coffee break, and after that there's a live demonstration of the tool, and where we of course will show Splunk and PowerConnect there, and we'll go into some of the use cases that we have described in the agenda. So first, a bit about iMore. We are a company founded in 2003. We are a niche player in the monitoring market, or the APM market, as it's called, and we are mainly focusing on the Benelux and the Nordics. We also have an office. We have an office in Utrecht, but we also have an office in Copenhagen. And over the years, we were looking for an SAP solution. And this SAP solution, now we recently found it, and that is also a driver for us to go more to the European, the full European market. So you can see on the left side, we are now European distributor and service provider for this product, for PowerConnect. So we will also do business with other customers in Europe. We are now around 90 people, so 90 performance specialists, and that's the only thing we do. We don't have any side businesses. We focus on other parts. We just focus on monitoring, and by doing that, we also try to get a better performing IT landscape and more value from the monitoring tools within the landscape, and that translates. Hopefully, that's what we strive for an 8+ in customer satisfaction every year. We are gaining these numbers, so that's something I'm personally very proud of. So a bit about our customers. We have quite a few customers in the Benelux, of course, and in the Nordics, but we're rapidly expanding now with large brands in Europe, and we're focusing on the top 500 customers. And there's a reason for that, but I'll go more into depth in the next slide. We are traditionally strong in retail, public, and the logistics sector, but we have a more diverse portfolio of customers that also includes some large finance customers, industry, and the energy markets. So there might be some customers here that might see the wrong brand here. So that means that we are very proud of the customers that we have. And by doing this, you also see on the bottom side our software partners. iMore is a technology-enabled service provider which uses the best of breed products within the market. So you see several logos here, which are now current market leaders on the level of monitoring that they provide. And what we do as iMore is we go to the customer, we ask them for the challenge that they have. We try to go into a conversation with them, and we find a solution for the customer challenge that they have. And we can use several products as a sort of a toolbox in order to provide the proper, well-scoped solution. So not oversized, but also not undersized. So we give the right thing that answers the question that the customer has. But there's a reason why we have these type of customers, because there is a common denominator here. And that is that the business processes that our customer has, most of them are critical and they're also IT run. So if it means that these business processes are critical, then there's also a need in order to make sure that they're running properly, so that the performance is right, that the availability is right. So that means, we can provide them with a monitoring solution that makes sure that you have the proper insights, and you can do data-driven operations. So that means that you do business choices based on the factual data. And with all this information that you have from the monitoring perspective, you can also be preventive, and you can make sure that your business continuity has a priority with your primary course of actions. And what we see now, just to go more into the part which you guys are all joined for the Splunk and the PowerConnect part, we see a few challenges that they have here. So this is more on the SAP side. We see, for example, troubleshooting within SAP. I don't know if we have some SAP people available here, but my knowledge back then was that if there was a problem with SAP, then it also was on, for example, Solaris or a Unix operating system. There was also the network interfaces, there was storage, and all these people need to come together if there was a large problem within the landscape. So we needed to troubleshoot, and we needed the experts, because the SAP was so critical that you needed the seniors there, and all the seniors came together. It cost a lot of money, it's very time consuming, and that group of people needed to tackle the problems. So that's a problem or a challenge that our customers ask. Could you help us with troubleshooting SAP? Because now it's too time consuming and we have too many war room meetings. Another one which is quite big, and we see that coming up into the market right now, so we get more and more questions about this. Our customers would like to follow business data through the landscape, and that's not just SAP, but it's also different technology stacks. So if you could imagine, you have a retail store, for example, and you have a point of sale as a cash register, and there's something being sold there, it's being inputted in the cash register, and all of the information is flowing. So it goes to your backend system. It's going to your replenishment, to your stock, to your warehouses, and in the end, there might be logistics. There's trucks going there and making sure that everything in the SRM part is going well. And if there are multiple technology stacks within these business flows, and SAP is in there as well, then you have a challenge. The people that have SAP knowledge, most of them probably know this problem, because if it's within SAP, there is a solution for this provided by, well, you can guess, it's provided by SAP. But if the SAP data goes outside of the SAP domain, and it goes into the Microsoft stack, it goes into the Unix stack, or it might be a service bus where data goes in, it's being scrambled, it's being enriched, and it goes to different hosts. How do you follow your data right then? And that's a question that we get more and more often. And I think that's also a part where Sander Martens will have a very nice explanation from a customer perspective. So make sure to follow that later on. And the last one I would like to emphasize as well is the tedious task that you have, for example, from security. If you have a 5-system landscape and you get an IT audit, that might not be a big problem. But now think you're a big industry, and you're a big manufacturer, and you have 200 plus SAP systems, and you need to do a yearly audit there. Then you have a very big problem, because you need a large team of people in order to provide that information to the security officers, to the auditing companies, making sure that you provide everything on time in a proper way, and have all those people allocated in project teams, which you cannot use otherwise. So they're asking us, hey, Imor, could you please help us trying to do some more continuous compliance? Because in my large landscape, these tedious tasks, they're so time consuming that I need to automate this. And do you have a solution for this? And all these questions and all these challenges that we see here are very diverse. And in order to make sure that you get a proper answer to all those questions, we need to make sure that every data source that you have within your landscape in order to give an answer to these challenges needs to be combined. And this is the introduction to Splunk. Because if you look at SIEM solutions, for example, and for those who are not familiar with the SIEM solutions, is security and event management solutions. This is consolidation of your data. Splunk, as I said earlier, we use the best of breed within the market. We use the market leaders, and Splunk has been a 7 year straight Gartner Magic Quadrant leader on SIEM. If you're on the top for that long, that means that you provide something which is very, very powerful. So yeah, if you look at analytics, we need to make sure that we have all the information together. But if you have machine data, for example, and you need to enrich it with business data, and you have some finance data there as well, those are different kind of data sources. So you need to have something that is data agnostic. And that is the data to everything platform that Splunk has. It's a data agnostic analytics platform, so you can combine all sources there. That also means SAP data can be in there, but there's also just flat CPU metrics, for example. And you can combine this because you have timestamping there. If you try to extract data from a system and you put it into a data analytics platform, and there's no timestamp there, how can you correlate that data with business data, which is very time-stamped? Because I need to know if my order was sold at 2:16 today. Because there you can make sure on real-time basis that you have all this information to make some business choices, like I mentioned earlier. On top of that, Splunk provides very powerful dashboarding functionality. So if you have all that data from different sources, you can create monitoring dashboards within a few minutes. And within a few minutes, you can model the data so you have the insights over your business flow that you would like to see in order to make some proper decisions. And I've also told you guys that trying to leverage the capabilities, in order to understand PowerConnect, you need to understand Splunk first. And one of the main things here is that the powers that Splunk bring to the table can be leveraged on PowerConnect as well. So there's a very powerful machine learning capability within Splunk, and you can use the machine learning capabilities on SAP data. So what it basically means is that you can make sure that you have data that's going into Splunk, and you can put the machine learning capabilities on top, and you can predict your business flows. You can predict your outages of your landscape, but you can also predict your capacity problems that might arise next week, because it's that powerful. And we've seen it in action, and it's over 90% plus accurate that you can predict any outages within your landscape. This is something that will be covered more into the demonstration later on. So yeah, make sure that you stay for that interesting part. So if we go to PowerConnect, what exactly is PowerConnect? So the title of the webinar is Make Your Black Box Transparent. And that means that SAP is very, very hard to extract data from in order to correlate it from within the landscape. So the more systems you have, the harder it is to correlate the data. But what PowerConnect can do is that it can extract the data of SAP into Splunk in a real-time way without any aggregation. So if you look at SAP, after a week, all the data gets aggregated and it gets all combined. And the more it gets combined, the harder it is to use it for analytics, because the data doesn't make any sense anymore. You lose all the details that you would like to have in order to make a proper analysis or root cause analysis for a problem, or to make a business decision on. Making business decisions on aggregated data, that's the first takeaway of the day. Never do this, because if you do this, you're making the wrong decisions there. So if we go from PowerConnect, it's a product of Brave New World Consulting. It's an Australian-based company, and they've been developing this product for over 7 years now. So it's a very robust and mature product. But it also means that the customers that are using PowerConnect and they had questions about their use cases, or they would like to add some features there, those all been implemented into the product. So 99 out of 100 questions can be answered out of the box with PowerConnect. That's something that is very interesting, but you need to make sure that you can use it quite fast after the deployment. So if you look a bit lower, there's the implementation. If you look at SAP tools, for example, with Solution Manager, if you have it configured already, that's no problem at all. You have the monitoring in place. But now you would like to add a new monitoring use case. And then you need to configure it all again, because Solution Manager isn't the most easy to use product out there. So they needed to have a high velocity product that if there is a question from the business, for example, that it can be implemented within hours. And if it can be implemented in hours, it gives value within hours. And that's something that is a very powerful tool. That's also one of the main reasons why Brave New World started developing this product. If you look at the implementation time of PowerConnect, that's something that can be done via transaction synced in SAP for the ones who are here with an SAP background. So you implement the add-on on SAP, and you have it up and running in one day. You can start analyzing that data when PowerConnect is pointed to your Splunk instance. The data will start flowing, and you can start doing your analysis after minutes, which is something that I think that's a very big thing if you compare it to other products. Also, not unimportant to mention, I think this is also a game changer. If it runs on NetWeaver Stack 7.0 to 7.5, it's supported and certified. And certification in SAP isn't an easy task. It's something that's being done every 6 months, and every 6 months they test you on a lot of things. And one of the main things our customers ask as well, is this something I can uninstall as well? Because if there is a problem, because you're touching my business critical system, I would like to have the assurance here that if it's there and it provides any problems, I can install it as well. Luckily, we never had these problems, but it is something sort of a guarantee that it's doable. It's also being tested on security, for example. So you don't have to worry about anything because it's certified, and it is the only solution on the market right now that can extract SAP data to Splunk in a certified way. That also means for S/4HANA, it's supported and it's certified. If you look a bit more further and you look at the cloud products, for example, if you look at SCP, SAC, Fieldglass, SuccessFactors, those are all going to be supported end of May 2020. So that's a month from now. And if you look a bit further into passing to about Hybris, for example, it's going to be in Q3 2020. So I think that's something on the horizon which will help out a lot of customers. To go a bit more into depth into the implementation timeline of PowerConnect, because SAP consultants most of the time they're very busy, and these people are not very common in the market. So if you have the people there, you would like to have them for products and not specifically for the operational task, because you would like to automate it, for example. So time is very precious. And because time is very precious, the implementation time of such a product needs to be as short as possible. So it's about 8 hours to implement this product, and about half of the time, so about 4 hours of this, is used by the Splunk team. So that's getting the data there, trying to configure stuff there. And for the basis team, it's around 3 hours. And of course, this varies if you have your release process, your change releases, for example. That's the thing we can't take into account because that's different for every customer. But on the technology-wise, you can have this implemented within 8 hours. There's also an hour for us as the implementation partner, for example, because there's a bit of prerequisites, and we need to have some calls to make sure that you have lined up the right people. But if you compare these few hours with the monitoring solutions now on the market with SAP, which could go implementations for a month, 6 months, or maybe a year in order to have this installed in the proper way, these are game-breaking timelines, I think. If we go to a high-level design of what PowerConnect is, you can, as I've told you earlier, all the products can be implemented. For example, if you have ECC, BW, whatever, it can all be implemented, because if it's running on a NetWeaver stack, we can support it. And what also is interesting to mention, because I forgot to tell you in the last slide, there's several 10,000s of tables in SAP. The extractor of PowerConnect can make sure that the data is being extracted from each and every one of those tables. There's no table that cannot be extracted. So you could hold as a rule of thumb, if the data resides in SAP, I can extract the data and I put it into Splunk, and I can visualize this in a business process. I can visualize this for my technology team, or I can visualize this to show to the higher management. That's all a possibility because all the data can be extracted. And also because PowerConnect was written natively in ABAP, that's the programming language of SAP, the data is being sent from SAP and it's not being pulled via API because there are several instability issues if you start requesting items via API at SAP. That will cause instability, and if you have instability on your mission or business critical systems, that's something we won't advise, and that's something probably you guys don't want as well. It needs to be stable, it needs to be low impact, and it needs to be run certified. That is what PowerConnect is. From PowerConnect, it gets sent to Splunk, and from Splunk, you have all the data present now, and you have several use cases that you could use. And in a previous slide, it stated as well, your creativity is your own limitation because all the data is there, so you can decide what you do with the data. But these four are the main things that we see with our customers. That's one, it's automation of time-consuming tasks. These are some transactions that I could still memorize at the top of my mind when I was doing basis consultancy, the so-called morning checks. We need to check if there are some dumps in the system. We need to check if all my jobs were running correctly. We need to check if the data load went right. These were all manual tasks because we need to decide if the system was running well last night, for example. Automated. Why would you do something to a basis consultant like that? I wasn't happy with it, and probably the guys that are doing it from your side won't be happy with it as well. This is very time consuming and it can be automated. The second one is troubleshooting. I've mentioned this earlier, troubleshooting. If you have all the data consolidated on one spot, troubleshooting is easier, it's faster, it's less expensive because you don't need all the experts present in order to troubleshoot this, and it makes sure that you solve the problem faster. And the third one, that's business process monitoring. I think I covered that. And the last one is security. Paul Verhul, which is a presenter as well, will go more into depth this later on in the presentation. So these are the four use cases that we see the most. But again, your creativity is your only limitation because you have all the data, so it's up to you what you would like to do with it and how you would like to help your company out. So if we look at the first one, and I think there's a few more because the troubleshooting part and the automation part, these are both daily operation tasks. And my colleague Shabols will go more into depth from a technical perspective on SAP PowerConnect. So Shabols, I would like to give you the digital floor and please tell everyone about the nice possibilities that you have.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Szabolcs. I am solution manager within IMOR. Oh, sorry about that. I'm solution manager within IMOR, and my function as a solution manager is actually a mashup between two. Because on one side, I'm pre-sales towards the customer, but on the other side, I'm also product owner of our SAP PowerConnect solution. I just turned on my webcam so you can all see me as well. So without further ado, let's continue with the use case of daily operations. And to start everything off, we will take a look at the challenges in daily operations. Because generally, whenever we are at customers, generally when customers ask me, hey, we have this problem, can you help us with it? We can, well, pretty much group it into a couple of predefined criteria, right? The very first is always real-time monitoring and alerting, because the issues that they face is in the beginning centered around, hey, I have this very important system that's running. I want to make sure that it keeps running, and I want to be notified whenever things are either going bad or starting to go bad. And that's where alerting is coming from. And because SAP PowerConnect is built also on top of Splunk. You have the entire Splunk stack that you can use to, that you can leverage to answer your questions. And I'm talking here about machine learning capabilities, predictive capabilities, and even automation capabilities. The second part about it is integration. Jeffrey has stated this a couple of times. SAP is your most important system, but it's not the only system, especially when we're talking about revenue streams. For example, you take a supermarket, you take any store, you have cash registers. They are not running on SAP, yet everything is handled, the heavy lifting is handled within SAP. But if SAP is not getting the correct information in from the external systems, then SAP can still do its job very good, but the outcome is not what you would expect. So contextually following data through multiple systems, be it SAP or non-SAP, is one of the major challenges that I like to face in that sense. The third one is correlation, in a sense that if we look back at the second point, integration, you want to get contextual information from all of the different systems, and you want to correlate it in the sense that, hey, what does it mean? What does a well-performing system mean to the business, and what KPIs is the business looking for when they're trying to figure out if a system needs some extra maintenance or if it's running correctly? As a daily operations guy responsible for keeping everything up and running, you also would like to know, hey, how does errors in SM85, SM58, I'm sorry, or how does worker process utilization, or how do ABAP dumps contribute to in all of these cases negatively impact the business KPIs, and then which KPIs are impacted, and then from that thought process you can also continue to think, all right, so if this happens, it's bad to the business or it's bad for daily operation because, so what needs to be done to fix that, to resolve that, not having it to happen again. Another point is always data fidelity, in the sense that you don't want to monitor critical transactions, mission critical transactions based on aggregated data. You want live data and on-time data, but also with enough information that you can not only do a dashboard on, hey, everything is working fine, but if something is not working fine, then you want to be able to click through and deep dive into that problem by not only just looking at the amount of actions per second, but looking at, okay, which actions are there being performed and which one is just causing the spike that we are experiencing here. Another added benefit to high data fidelity is that if you want to compare your current workload to, for example, the beginning of the month or Black Friday, then you can do that without aggregation and have parts of your entire system next to each other, if you like to put it like that, and just compare without having to, without the need to make any types of assumptions based on aggregation. And this is all possible because SAP PowerConnect solution is not just a monitoring tool. It's like a monitoring framework that extracts the data and sends it to Splunk, where you can build and you can leverage the entirety of its power. Since we're talking about leveraging the power of Splunk, creating dashboards and maintaining reports can be quite time-consuming, and especially if you have reports ready for multiple departments. Multiple departments want to see, of course, different type of information, but you cannot keep putting in sensors in your system to extract different types of information in different types of way. You need one giant, well, my partner was saying that big data disk. You need that, and you want to have a single, what do you call it? A single way of understanding that information. So there's no discrepancy in, yeah, but my tool says this, but my tool says something else. You want one piece of data, one single point of truth from where you can slice it and dice it any way you'd like to, to fill in the needs of all the different departments that you may have. And this this way of creating dashboards and creating reports not only helps with well, the maintenance of it, because if new data comes in, if things need to be added, Splunk is smart enough to be able to handle that automatically. The only thing you need to tell them is, hey, I want to see this data, in a time chart by time going back 7 days, and Splunk will do that fairly easily for you. Jeffrey already touched on this part, especially the implementation time for the SAP PowerConnect SAP add-on via Sync. But generally, implementation time for me, the shorter is always the better. And if you can make changes to the framework relatively easily without having to reprogram things by just changing certain parameters or ticking or unticking a checkbox, that just saves lots of time in deciding which data you want to have, which data you don't want to have. And on the Splunk side of things, implementation time means you get a lot of pre-built intelligent dashboards, which give you an idea of what's possible, and you can just slice and dice it any way you'd like to display it in either your own pre-built Splunk applications that you use for security, for example, or things like ready-made dashboards for troubleshooting or end-user experience. Talking about end-user experience, with SAP PowerConnect, we are we get the possibility to deep dive into what the user's actually experiencing from from a user experience standpoint, not only from a website, the website side of things, but also the SAP GUI side of things. Meaning we can see how many users are active, what those users are doing, to a T code. If you want, you can either go deeper, because if you have, for example, Z transactions, you have certain screen IDs that could be attributed to certain steps within a business process. You can drill down to that. And if you'd like, you can even go deeper than that. So the possibilities to monitor the responsiveness of the system from an end user perspective and then correlate that to the enormous amount of technical metrics that you can gather from an SAP environment is priceless. So we have, let's see, about 7 points here. I will give a couple of examples from these points, and then the rest we will touch either during the customer presentation or in the demo at the end. So the very first use case is real-time monitoring. And by this, I mean the daily morning exercise. And we'd like to start with that because every morning when an SAP-based consultant starts, of course, you need to open a couple of transactions, a couple of T codes, just to see a couple of programs, just to see what has happened between the time you left from work and between the time you got there again. And you may check some things like, I don't know, SM50, SM37, ST22 if you're looking for dumps. You can check DPA cockpit for database alerts, for example. But this can become quite tedious, right? If you have more than one SAP system. Maybe it's manageable if you have a handful, but right, if you're managing tens or hundreds of SAP systems at the same time, then it could be really time consuming. Like, let's be honest. And that can be assisted by with Splunk, because if you can take out all those metrics, send it to Splunk, you can create a very basic dashboard. In this case, as I'm showing in the screenshot right now, just a couple of cases. Hey, do I have AWeB dumps? Yes or no. Do I have failed jobs? Yes or no. And because it's Splunk, you have the ability to click through and see, all right, yes, I have failed jobs. These are the jobs that have failed, and this is the reason. Now this is from one SAP system. If you have multiple, you can also turn it around. You can create like a photo negative. Instead of looking at the use cases as they are, you can just look at the use cases that have failed, or the use cases that are above or below certain thresholds. So all of a sudden, instead of going through multiple systems or going through multiple dashboards to see if everything is working as intended, you can just look at one giant screen, one dashboard, and see a number, maybe like 3 or 4, meaning, hey, in these 3 or 4 systems, I have problems. Then you can click through that, going to detailed and more in-depth information with every click. So you eventually figure out what the problem is across all of the systems. Another thing about real-time monitoring and alerting, and especially leveraging the power that Splunk gives you, including this high fidelity data that we can use, is that we can create we can do calculations, and we can do with the help of some machine learning here and there, we can predict certain things, because machine data in that sense is very predictable. And if something if a line has a continuous trend up, then the prediction capabilities of Splunk will eventually pick that up and alert you based on that. So if we take a look at a high worker process utilization example, within Splunk, we can calculate that, relatively simple calculation. We can see where it's at, what its prognosis is, what its trend line is, and based on the trend line, you can create alerts. This can help you achieve seemingly negative mean time to resolution, because if you're leveraging this power, you can fix things before they actually cause harm to your system or to the users working on that. That is the power that you can leverage with SAP PowerConnect and Splunk for, amongst other things, daily operations. I talked a little bit about high data fidelity, and I just want to show you that the correlation between one system or 2 systems, between 2 moments in time, in any shape and form, without data aggregation, is possible. So what I have here is two snapshots of systems, a couple of days apart, and you can, because the graphical representation options that Splunk provides us, we can fairly easily click together, how do you call it? Fairly easily click together like a comparison chart to see what has happened then, what has happened now. This is especially useful when all of a sudden one day users are complaining, hey, the system is slow, but nothing really shows out of the ordinary if you take a look at just one metric after the other. So you have to combine them. You have to see the correlation between everything. This is the whole monitoring from end to end perspective idea here as well. Last but not least, I will touch on this also during the demo. You'll see it live. But monitoring from an end user perspective for either security purposes, auditing purposes, or just plain old performance monitoring is possible now together with SAP PowerConnect and Splunk, because it doesn't matter how your users access your system based, be it SAP GUI or through the web interface. We can follow those user actions. We can also see if certain function modules are being called from certain user actions, and then all of a sudden you can answer things like, how is my system performing? Why is this call to this function module slow today, but it wasn't yesterday? Why do I have this function module? Who else is using it? Do other users also have problems with it? All of these questions can be answered because we can slice and dice and correlate data from SAP within the Splunk environment. And also, this data can be compared to yesterday or a couple of weeks ago, or for retailers, even Black Friday. How is this compared to the heaviest Friday you will most likely have during the year? And to give you a slight preview of how things are, we have a dashboard up and running that gives you, from a user perspective, a very easy time-based measurement on, hey, when do users perform actions, how fast or slow are those actions, and then what actions are there. And we can go down as technical as you want, but I will save that for the demo. So this was a very short introduction about the challenges that we see that customers are asking for, and customers would like help with from an SAP daily operation perspective. Now, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Paul Verhul.
Yes, Shabels, just 1 second,
yes,
because I have a question coming in.
Okay, sure.
Which is, what is the average impact on my system?
Well, of course, there is impact, and it really depends on the system itself. But we have done, actually, our colleagues from the United States and Australia have done measurements from one of their biggest clients, who has terabytes per day coming into Splunk, and the impact on the SAP environment is roughly 3%.
Okay. I hope this answers the question. And the next question is, do you support Java systems as well?
Of course, SAP PowerConnect supports dual stack. Both R3 and Java installations are possible.
Okay, thank you. Then I guess we can go to Paul.
Very good.
So thanks, Shabels, for sharing everything. So Inge, maybe you can give me the presenter rights for my screen. Thanks. So hi everyone, I'm Paul. As you have seen, PowerConnect has different use cases, and in my role as account manager, I've helped multiple companies adopting these use cases within their organization with great results. And there is, however, one use case we have not touched today, and this is security and compliance. And whether you're in banking, retail, insurance, manufacturing, health, or public, rising security threats are relevant across all sectors. And when it comes to security and compliance, we see two main challenges related to SAP. The first one is about security analysis. This is generally covered by a centralized SOC or SIEM team. And however, the data from their SAP systems is isolated. The centralized security team is not able to do threat detections. And in many cases, the SAP systems are not compliant to the company policy on security. The second one is about IT auditing. And more IT auditors ask to prove that you are on par with, for instance, user behavior analysis or password policies. And many companies are not able to give these answers to the auditors. So over the last years, PowerConnect developed extractions and standard dashboards specifically to answer these security and compliance related challenges. Out of the box, all relevant event extractors from SM18 to SM20 are available, and this also is the case for stat data. And based on these events, there are dashboards available in Splunk base that give insights into, for example, the number and type of users logged in, or for example, a list of users with default or well-known passwords. And because SAP data is pushed into Splunk, all Splunk capabilities become available. So not only this makes it easy to report or alert or maybe make dashboards for security data, it also has advanced threat detections in place based on the SAP of Splunk Security Essentials. And next to that, some of the customers we work with have Splunk Phantom in place to orchestrate security workflows by automating repetitive tasks and respond to threats within seconds. And now we'll show you an example of such a dashboard. So this is our SAP security scorecard. And this is a starting point for many of our customers to have an overview of relevant security and compliancy KPIs. And from this, you can click through to more specific dashboards, like this one, for example, that gave a great overview of, for instance, the historical view on authentication. And during our demo today, Bols will show you more of these dashboards to get you up to speed with what we can offer you out of the box with this SAP security dashboards. So by implementing the standard available dashboards, our clients found a solution to the two challenges mentioned before. They have an integrated solution in place that can be managed centrally by the SOC team. And as a result, this lowers the security risk that these companies face as a company. And next to that, there are security reports in place that support to become compliant based on the standards as set by the auditors. So this combination of PowerConnect and Splunk creates a unique capability to face the security challenges in SAP. And if you'd like to learn more about this, please visit our demo session today, where we will show more in detail dashboards. But first, we will go to Sander Martens from Jumbo to show you the last use case on business process monitoring. So Sander, please tell your story of Jumbo. It's very interesting.
So welcome everyone to this PowerConnect demonstration. Normally when we do a demonstration like this, I always start at the SAP side of things and then work my way over to Splunk from there. Now, if you have any questions during my presentation, don't hesitate to ask in the chat box. I'm hoping I will be notified by Inge if there's any question, and I will answer that as best as I can, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, Bols, that will mean I will interrupt you if there is a question.
Yes, please.
Okay, perfect.
So the basics of SAP PowerConnect, as we see in the presentations, is it's built up from two things, right? We have the SAP side of things, and we have the Splunk side of things. Now, looking at only the SAP side right now, we're talking about a plugin that you can install via Saint. The installation procedure is relatively straightforward and relatively simple. And once you install that, you have to activate a couple of BC sets. Once you activated those, you can get either from us like a template for user rights and well, users to access the SAP PowerConnect add-on, but also template rights for, say, users to be able to run these three jobs that you are seeing here. You can either create from the template your user, or just add that to your own user, whichever thing you find the most easy. Now, since we're talking about the jobs, I want to note that SAP PowerConnect runs on three main jobs. One job is just a check job. It pretty much does housekeeping, any types of housekeeping that the add-on might need. You have the metric collection, and you guessed it, the metric uploader. Those three work in conjunction together to get you the data. Now, since we're talking about data, I would like to dive into the data collection possibilities of SAP PowerConnect, and then touch on a couple of things here and there. And if you'd like some more detail from one or more option that I might have glazed over quite quickly, do interrupt us. No worries there. So the first thing you see here, right, is you have this is just a control panel. As I said, the SAP side of things is primarily built to extract information and to send that information over to Splunk. And it does that quite well. Now, Jeffrey also said that the Splunk instance never phones home, if you want to call it that. Splunk never contacts SAP. It's always the other way around. So SAP PowerConnect gathers data, and then when you have either enough data or data is time sensitive, the metric uploader will just push it to Splunk. There is no other communication happening. So it's always a push communication. And then, the counter of what has been sent over the past day is also displayed within our app. And from that perspective, you can say, yeah, what if my Splunk instance is not available? What happens then? Well, we do save metrics that cannot be sent because we're within our own namespace. Because we're certified, we have to be within our own namespace, and we have a certain threshold where after that is reached for metrics, everything works first in, first out. Now, on the SAP GUI side of things, you can, for example, we have control panels to start certain things, but we have a lot of ways to configure this. Everything you see here can be configured. So we can configure options of the metric collection job. We can configure how many parallel jobs we have running concurrently. We can configure the archive job, day retention, etc., etc. I will not go into those level of details yet, but what I will drop into is the group definition. And the group definition is pretty much our holy grail of how we collect all this information. And we see SAP data as groups. That's how SAP PowerConnect collects it. We take a look at, for example, AL08, that's a group. AL11 is also a group. But then again, DBA Cockpit are multiple groups. The new SD03N are also multiple groups. And that's how we divide the data that is being picked up based on functionality. And then you see here like a checkbox, which you can turn on and off at will, enabling and disabling certain data collections. And I just scroll down a little bit, and as you can see, we are monitoring, for example, roll auth. This is SM18. Comparable to SM18, we have SM13, SM20, 51, SM51. We also have multiple group definitions just to make the data that bit more detailed and easily configurable. But this is generally the way this framework works. And I want to emphasize that it's a framework because yes, you get all of this out of the box, but there's absolutely nothing stopping you from developing your own. Or with our help, you can develop your own extractor for custom programs and SEC transactions and things that we might not have within the default setup. As you can see here, the new SD03N, we have a dozen or so group definition that we can select. What you also see is a lot of times that certain data is volatile, certain data is important, certain data is very time sensitive, and others not so much. So what we can do is we can measure, we can configure how data is being sent at what intervals. You're looking here, like for example, stat data, which is used from anywhere from end user experience monitoring to also security to also auditing. This is a very important data, so we send it in chunks of 30 seconds. Aggregated data, we can also go back to maybe chunks of 1 day. We can also go back to maybe chunks of 1 week, depending on the type of data. So this gives you a lot of option in min-maxing or configuring your SAP PowerConnect instance for your specific environment. The presentation from Jumbo from Sander Martens, we're using a lot of IDOC messages. Hang on, I just went past it. We're using a lot of IDOC messages. We're extracting IDOC messages and getting all the information out of there. So for example, the VPWMS IDOC is the revenue IDOC. So we're extracting that, all the fields, all the different seg names, all the different parts of it, and we are extracting at a default interval of 60 seconds. We also look back 60 seconds because PowerConnect only extracts deltas. And since we're talking about, let me get out of here. Since we're talking about IDOC messages, I can also show you that really quickly. So we also have a thing that's called an IDOC filter, IDOC segment filter, and within this filter, you can well, you can use it as like a installation wizard to select certain IDOC fields from the header perspective, which you would like to extract. And then you can always start with the message type. Our GUI helps you select the messages that you want to do, or you can type it in manually. There's nothing stopping you from doing that as well. And then also the different types. You can filter by direction. Right now we don't have it filtered because we want everything, but you can filter by direction or different ports and whatnot. But the important thing is here as well, you have the active checkbox. Within a lot of our configuration, you have this because this gives you a lot more control in configuring and then actually running the extraction. And specifically for IDOC, because you can extract the IDOC header information, but you also want, what you're actually looking for is segment information, right? So we can do a lot of things here. As you see in my demo environment, I have set up a wildcard, but I could have just as well selected one of these seg names for convenience purposes, depending on really on what type of information we're looking for. And here as well, we have the active checkbox. At the very last field, or actually the very last depth that we can go is field names. So if we're extracting a segment, we're extracting either all field names, one, or depending on how many you have set up here. Because here as well, you can just select whichever field name you want. It will the PowerConnect add-on will extract that for you, and you can use that. What we have done at Jumbo is first we have selected everything. So we've done like a shotgun method, wildcards everywhere. Let's see which fields we need to get the data that we need, and then we can dial back from there if we run into either data constraints or Splunk server constraints. If we can stay on the topic of extraction for a minute, because I was talking about giving you the option to do it yourself. Because it's a framework, we not only give you like a ready-made set of groups that you can take on and off in your environment and have it ready within a day. We also give you the possibility of adding extra to it based on functionality that we already have. So for example, we already have a table reader functionality. So you can leverage that to, here's the option, you can leverage that to get data from tables, from columns, based on certain selection criteria, etc. Or if you prefer, you can also build your own query based on, for example, OpenSQL queries, which you just give in. You can configure it based on a timer again, like you've seen in the group definition field. You can set what the interval has to be. Copy paste the OpenSQL query, and you're good to go. That is pretty much the ease that we try to convey to you. That using this monitoring add-on, once everything is set up, fairly straightforward to add new things or to disable things that you don't need anymore. And of course, all of these data is being collected by these jobs and then sent to Splunk, and then you can go to Splunk to actually do something with the data, to visualize it, to create reports on it, etc. So we can continue then our demo. And generally when you start up the SAP PowerConnect app for Splunk, one of the main things you land on is this system overview page. Now, if you note, we are looking at a time range of last 24 hours. We have ID7 system selected. In my test environment, I have 2. And then we also have a span setting. That's a very, very Splunk thing to do. We'll ignore that for a little bit. But what you see here is like a mix and match of possibilities that you can monitor. We're looking at current CPU usage. We're looking at memory usage. We're looking at uptime, which is a calculated metric. But we're also looking at worker process utilization based on background jobs or dialog jobs. Now, these things are all calculated metrics. So we take, for example, for the worker process utilization, right? We take the data that SAP gives us from, for example, SM51. We can take the data, we can mix and match it as well for troubleshooting purposes with SM37, for example, and we calculate based on that how busy are the worker processes based on what their allocated times and threads are. And that gives you this percentage overview, which is accurate on your system. Of course, it will depending on how much work process you have dedicated to background jobs or dialog jobs, or totally in your system. But that's how the calculation works. And because we're calculating this metric, right, we can display it in like a what's the latest number chart, but we can also display it historically speaking, what the measure was. And we are talking about that the same measure displayed multiple times and used in conjunction with each other. The same thing we can do with, for example, authentication activity. Well, at the current moment, we don't have any authentication activity on our test system. But as you can see from a historical perspective, these are time zones, time frames, sorry, in a couple of hours. We can see that we have had a couple of failed login attempts, but also successful login attempts, luckily. And the same information we can also use to, for example, combine it with system logs. What do the system logs say? Now, currently we have a very easy to understand system log overview, but for example, you can create your own regular expression extractor for it and take out for whichever logs you want the keywords, the key measures that you are looking for. We have some network activity as a bonus in here. Now, I was talking in one of my slides about the early morning exercises for every basis consultant. Some of the cases you see in this startup dashboard, we're looking at: do we have dumps? Do we have failed jobs from the past 24 hours? Do we have active locks, for example, that have been on for longer than a day? Another thing that never actually happens on purpose, but yet still happens, is users leave their clients open for change. It can happen, no worries, but you can drill down from this. An important note here is whether you have system traces activated currently, yes or no, because if you activate this trace, it can have a very detrimental impact on your performance. Now, mind you, this is a test system, so we don't have a lot of data on here currently. But what you see is that we can also display T-code usage by time, but also by performance. I will touch on this in one of my other dashboards. So,
Charles,
yes.
before you do that, I have another question. Can we get SAP usernames?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's your answer.
As you see here, so we can see which account has been logged in to SAP, and then we can also deep dive from here. Deep dive down from here, of course.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answers the question.
Well, since we're on this screen anyway, this is our next-gen end-user monitoring dashboard. And what we have tried to do here is we have tried to give you a broad overview of the status of your SAP system from a user perspective. So we're looking at average response times that are calculated from raw stat data. We're looking at average, actually not average, but the exact number of sessions, and also compare that to the exact number of actions that the users are doing. So we're separating logged in users who are idle from users who are actually very busy on the environment. And we're looking at the last 7 days, and we see a couple of accounts accounts active, and one of the most actives is James with a total number of sessions of 45. So let me click on him, and immediately we see a couple of extra details from here. First thing, we can also calculate when his last action was. So that was like 4 hours ago, 4 hours and a little bit time ago. But then we see here a very long list of 45 individual sessions that James has done. We can see the start time, and we can also see the calculated duration from that. We also have the number of actions that James has done. So let me pick, I don't know, this one, 17. Let's see if this is a good example. So if you click on this session ID, the first thing you see is a time zone, a time frame based on within which time James has done most of his actions, and you can see they're pretty much scattered across 32 minutes. And then if we scroll down some more, we see not only the time frame of actions, but also his actual session ID, his SAP GUI ID. We can see has been switching from SAP GUI terminals, when the action has been performed, the client he has been in, the T code that he has opened, also which application screen he's on. Now, for default T codes, or actually out of the box T codes, this might or might not be very interesting, but for SAP programs and custom applications, customers can relate this to the business flow pretty much. And then one step further, we can also take a look at, hey, is he doing some form of action that SAP can report? So for example, pressing buttons or starting reports or things like that. We can also extract that. Now, a little detail from here is that we are measuring the response time, but this response time, for example, this is a better example, is a combined response time from 3 different domains. So SAP GUI gives you numbers like, hey, what is your SAP GUI time? What is your network time? And what is the application time? So what is the SAP time? We combine these two and give you this response time. What we can also do is pull them apart. So you see all of the 3 domains separately. What we can also do is, if this action, for example, has a database action behind it, it will have a subtype for that database. So then we can measure what the database time is compared to what the application time is, compared to the network time, compared to the SAP GUI time. We have very fine grain control over this type of data, which we can extract. And currently, I'm showing it from a performance perspective, but the same thing you can use for auditing and compliance. Now, let's go back to my original demonstration. So during the presentation, we have talked about our solution being on the how do you say, being like a ready-made solution with lots of dashboards out of the box, so you can get started and going with relative ease. The dashboards that we have are pretty intricate and quite elaborate, built from a certain perspective. Now, these are dashboards that look at, for example, logs, look at the dumps that we can have, look at the system logs. We can also take a look at IDOC statuses, for example. Let's open that one. Since we talked about IDOCs during the session, there we go. The most basic things that we can do is read out the headers and give you information from that. But we can also take it one step further, and that's what we're doing at Jumbo currently, that we're extracting the contextual IDOC information and not just the headers. So you have all of your information ready. And as you can see, IDOC messages have been coming in since about noonish, okay, an hour before noon, details. And we can combine them. We can slice and dice the view to create different reports, different overviews, different time-based charts, or one of my favorites, pie charts. We can use, for example, let's see. These EDI identification numbers, for example, can be used to find store IDs, or regional IDs, etc. Inge, I think we just have a few more minutes left. Is that correct? Looking at the time?
That is correct. To be specific,
Okay, so,
2.
Ooh, okay, excited. Okay, so then I'll touch base on this dashboard, which I've just opened. Before, this is one of our troubleshooting dashboards. So what we try to give you with this dashboard in one pane of glass is an overall overview of your system and what it is doing. So we can, this dashboard is still in development, so we can give you a couple of ideas of where we're going with this currently. That's why it's also under the development tab right here. So we can give you a CPU metrics, including a trend line, which you can click on, of course. Fairly standard information, but then if you click on this particular dot right here, there we go. Then all of a sudden we have correlation with a whole different T code, finding out within that time frame what has been going on, what application server within what ID, generating what report by what user, and also which action that action has been up to at that current time. So right now we clicked on, let's see, these are 5-minute intervals. So you're seeing things for from a 5-minute perspective. The same thing, for example, memory, you can click on it, you will see the historical overview and not just the current date. Things we can do, for example, is check out the health metrics for ST02, and you can also click on one of them to see what their historical data can be like. Another thing that we can do is, of course, ABAP dumps and trends, which can be quite, let me close that one, which can be quite important to know. Here we are putting it together per day. So if you click on Wednesday, for example, you will see that you have 3 ABAP dumps for 2 different users, and it's pretty much on time, the same dump from different line numbers. Another thing that we can do is, I'm not sure why this is 00. Maybe that's why it's still in development, but we are calculating, again, as we saw in the beginning, the percentage of work process utilization by server. Since we only have one on the demo environment, you see just one bar chart. We can click on this, for example, and then you will get you extra information for that for that instance name. So for that server. And if you're wondering what is happening right here, I'm not sure what we have a lot of update processes running. You can click on that as well, and then it will give you at what time with what service in what type of worker process.
I don't know if you see my webcam turning on, Shabols, but it's sort of a time stop.
Right. Sorry. I will.
No,
I am done.
Thanks so much for the demonstration. I would like to thank everyone joining, and hopefully we've answered the questions you had, and we showed the information that you would love to see. If there's any more information you would like to see, or you're interested in some customized advice, or perhaps you have some questions which you maybe come up later on, please send them. My email is here on the slide, which is now currently not showing, but Inge will make sure that that the information is being sent out to all attendees and the people that weren't able to join today. But make sure to reach out, and we can answer all questions that you need, or maybe do a one-on-one. And again, thanks so much. Hopefully you have some time to enjoy the nice weather, and see you next time. So thanks so much.